a little short here. Hold on. Wow. Thank you for surrendering to the flow while we waited for a couple batteries. You just got to let go. And thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight, because as we know, everything is going on in Phoenix this weekend. Everything. So that you made it out tonight, it really means the world to me. So, and I want to just say a couple thank yous before I jump into the book. Thank you to Rodrigo, who's my partner. He helped me. He's back there at the camera. It's kind of like a football team, you know. You kind of pass the ball off and he carries it to the touchdown. And it's always like a collaborative teamwork, and he helped me, edit and put it together and to, publish it. So thank you, Rodrigo. And then I also want to shout out to Cassie, who's from Pomegranate Cafe. And if you haven't been to Pomegranate Cafe, it's the best vegetarian organic food in the valley. And she's an artist and friend, and she went through the book and helped edit and put her heartfelt notes and just really appreciated all her love and support. And also, Mashawn, who helped edit also and support and just really has been a supportive team player. And so just want to say thank you, Mashawn. So some of you, I don't know how many of you were here at my first book talk, which was a couple years ago here at Changing Hands, a few of you, which I came out with my first book, which is called 10,000 Hours, You Become What You Practice. And it's a book about just becoming conscious of everyday practices in all areas of life over time lead to certain results. And I'd say it's a practical book. It's more of a mind-body book. But Surrender to the Flow is a book that's rooted in, I'd say, spirituality. It's a book about connection to this invisible force that is in everyone and everything. And it happens right now, in this present moment. And some call it your truest nature, your higher self, higher power, the way, the unnameable, the divine presence, intuition, which is inner knowing without thinking, inspiration, called the zone, when we're fully engaged and we're fully in the moment and we lose track of time, we lose track of, it's like our thinking mind just drops and we're fully in the moment. And it's this ability to tap into this silent space, to this void where one has access to the highest, purest, most elevated form of expression. And it is the most powerful, it takes you to this unknown place where everything can happen. And I've spent the last 20 years just dipping in here, studying, practicing through many different areas and becoming aware of this process. And I'm excited to share it with you. But before I jump into the book, for some of you don't know who I am, and I'm going to give you a little backstory of just little bits and pieces of my life. Let's see if I can do this up. I'm going to take you way back. I grew up in Oregon. Well, actually, I was born in Seattle. Go Seahawks! No. No. It's true, and I am rooting for the Seahawks. My family moved to Oregon, and I grew up in Oregon on this beautiful apple tree farm, 30 acres. We had animals. We had horses, cows, sheep, goats, chickens. It was this amazing place to grow up. And I was also a very silent child, very introverted, in fact, my parents got me into music, and I learned the language of music before I even learned language. And I think those two, music and nature had a huge impact on my early life. And, and my family, they're dysfunctional. No, isn't everybody's family dysfunctional? We all go through experiences to learn lessons, to evolve and to, become better. And in my family, my dad, he was a rager. So it was very intense and very chaotic at times. And as a young child, I had to really become sensitive or tune into the family energy and just to know when things were going to happen. And I do think that sensitivity, it became a gift later in life, but it definitely was, terrifying at times. And after living in Oregon, my parents moved to Las Vegas. Well, we all moved to Las Vegas. They didn't leave us behind, even though I probably wouldn't have mind. Going from the farm to Las Vegas, you could say it was a huge transition. And, but I did have a lot of great teachers, music teachers, dance teachers, and, but when I was in junior high, I was one of those kids that was bullied. I was severely bullied. I had some successes. I had won some piano scholarships, and I had won a contest with Teen Magazine, and had some successes, little small modeling jobs. But there were some girls that didn't like me and got a gang after me, and so my life was threatened to the point where I eventually had to be removed from the school. I'm so glad there's so much out on bullying these days, because back then you just suffered. And but I had a teacher, it was my English teacher, and he had pulled me aside and he said, I see what's going on here, and you might be interested in coming to one of my martial arts classes. And I thought, oh, okay. He's like, I teach self-defense. And my parents thought, great, that sounds like a great idea. And so I got into the martial arts class, and it was the first time someone had put words to this energy thing. Because he'd say, you have to tune in. You have to tune in to, sense danger. And he's like, I want you to use your intuition, which is your inner knowing, your inner wise teacher that knows before thinking. And your instinct, which is the same as your intuition. Intuition's from your spirit. Instinct is from your body. It's like your gut instincts. It's a knowing that happens before you even think. And so he would actually go around the room, and you never knew when he would come up and grab you by the hair. And he had his tune in, so you would sense it and you could respond right away. And I learned a lot from him and began to really tune into those sensitivities, which actually came in handy because a few years later, at age 16, I graduated high school, and I was thrusted into the fashion world in New York City. And I came across some interesting characters in the fashion world. Some of you might have seen on my Facebook. This last few months, I had done a few TV interviews here in town over the Bill Cosby scandal, because I met Bill Cosby, and he tried to get me to go to Vegas on his jet plane. It fed me the same lines, and I sensed something wasn't right. Like, here he was, like this persona, but something didn't feel right, and I knew if I got on that plane that something bad would happen. And I think that intuitive sense, really saved my life in many situations. So now I'm in the fashion world. I'm living the high life. I'm working for magazines. I'm doing catalogs. Start traveling. Milan, Paris, Tokyo. I went to over 25 countries before I was 25 years old. I was living 2 months here, 2 months there. And it was this whirlwind. it was just fast paced, and it was just so much. And I kind of look back at that time in my life as the time I look behind the curtain, or I got to see behind the curtain, because I was around a lot of celebrities, very wealthy people, like, people who were at the pinnacle of their success, beautiful people, and we would all see this persona on magazines, but behind the curtain, when I got to meet a lot of these people, it was a whole different story. And as a young person, you move to New York to make it, and and you're striving for this success to become famous or make all the money, and I remember I got to a point where I'm like, if this isn't it, then what is it? And I realized that outward success had nothing to do with inner success. And it was just like one morning I woke up, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I'd realized, I too had become disconnected. Because I was living this fast pace, going to parties. I was, I say living above the neck, and if someone had told me and said, the only question you need to ask yourself is your heart on your path? Because if your heart's not on your path, then you're not on your path. And my heart, I didn't know where I was. I was exhausted. I was disconnected, and I felt like my inner light was growing dim, And so it was just that week I packed up, and I remember getting in that taxi when I was leaving New York. I said, from here on out, I was going to dedicate my life to finding my path, finding my heart, and I ended up in the desert. How perfect. Strip malls and desert. Cactus, nothing. And I say how perfect because here I was I was living this fast-paced life, and this, and then I came here and there was like nothing going on. But that's when I began to, go on an inner journey. And the composer Leonard Cohen, he says the inner journey is the most exciting adventure one can go on, because it's when you begin to awaken to who you are, you begin to tap into this infinite potential. And it truly is, for me, the most exciting adventure I've gone on so far. And at that time, so I started working as a photographer, so I went to the other side of the camera, and I started, doing photography. And I met one of my first teachers, which was this woman named Gabrielle Roth, and some of you might know of her from the dance community. She was like this wise woman. Some called her the urban shaman. And she taught dance all around the world. But it wasn't the dance like learning steps or tango. It was coming to the dance floor where there were no steps. And it was the beginning of finding my own steps, finding your own steps. And she said, this is the path where you go from inertia, this low state of energy, to ecstasy, aliveness, going from imitation, somebody else's steps, to intuition, to originality. And it was this process of becoming aware of this ego mind, this thinking mind, this chattering, controlling, judgmental, this part of us that is, it's like our persona. It's this conditional part of ourself. And as you begin to, let it go, you start to move into the surrender, like you surrender to this flow. And it really was this process for me. Every time I came, it's like going from the known into the unknown. I bump up against this ego mind. And she'd say, everybody is a dancer. All of you, we're going to dance right now. No, I'm just kidding. Did that bring up the dragon? Oh my God, she's gonna, see? But it's true. Everybody is a dancer. You've seen little kids, you turn on some music when they're little, they just start, and they're just, woo, because they are life. They are source. And they begin to be conditioned to move out of that state. That's why Picasso said remaining an artist is one of the hardest things, because we're conditioned by parents, by teachers, by society, by, and she, Gabrielle Ross says, everyone's a dancer. It's just the ego is not a dancer. The ego, the mind doesn't dance. And this was, for me, when I got on the dance floor, it was the first time I began to embody. Like I returned, like I was always living somewhere else. And when I moved back into my body, I was like, I'm here. And, and through just being here, it was like the healing process happens when you fully inhabit your body, when you're fully here. And what I discovered is every time I'd go onto the dance floor to this unknown space, it's like how I was on the dance floor is how I was in life. And if, I'm on the dance floor and I'm worried about, am I dancing cool steps, or how's my hair look, or, I'm dancing in a small space and I have the whole dance floor, that's how I am in life. I'm worried about appearances, or I'm worried about, I stay in my little tight routine, you see. And as I began to go into this unknown space, I began to explore those edges. I began to move into, dancing all over the floor. And as I did that on the dance floor, I began to do that in life. Because life imitates art, art imitates life. And there was always a moment when, I just give myself to the dance. And as soon as I just gave myself to the dance, it was almost like I just surrendered. Like all this mental affliction, like all my stories, oh my God, what am I doing? Disappeared. And this separated, this individual, separate self called Phyllis, artist, whatever, my masks just dissolved. And I would just enter this state of, it was almost as if I wasn't there, it just become nobody. And the moment, it's like I wasn't even dancing any longer. I was being danced. And it truly was the beginning of returning to my heart, to my core, to this still point, to this free place within me that, returning to my life that really began to heal me and transform me from the inside out. And at that same time, I also began drawing, intuitive drawing. I was painting, I started doing intuitive drawings, and it was the same process. I'd come to the blank page, and I would start with just a movement. And I wouldn't come with any preconceived ideas, so I didn't know what was going to happen. And as soon as I put the pen to paper, it was all of a sudden, oh, what are you doing? This is terrible. You can't draw. There's the dragon. There's the ego. And as I fully engaged in the drawing, as I just stayed with it, like that dragon, that head tripper would just quiet down. And the drawing would just draw itself. And what would come through would always amaze me. I was like, oh, can you see some of the drawings that are in the book? I was like, oh, whoa. I didn't even know where that came from. And then I also was doing automatic writing. So I'd read the Artist Way book. I don't know if any of you guys have read Artist Way, an amazing book by Julia Cameron. And she has you write 3 pages every day, no matter what. So I was writing, and I start out like, oh, God, I have to write again. What am I going to say? And then all of a sudden, the stream of consciousness, this flow would happen, and the wisdom that would begin to come through I was like, whoa. And if I had any question, it was like, it got answered. And I started, singing and doing sounding, because when you sound or sing, there's no thinking. Because in thinking, or when you're talking, you can hide. But when you sound, here I am. It's vulnerable. And then at that same time, I was a classical pianist. I played classical music all my life. Instead of learning sonatas, I dipped into playing jazz. And if there's any jazz musicians out there, you can't count your way through jazz. You have to get in the groove. You got to feel your way. So it was all these things I was doing at that time was just, this whole process was bringing such awareness to where I was creating from, but also where I was living from, where I was working from. Like, I began to see, like, every time I went into the unknown, here was this head tripper. And it really began to heal me and transform me and move me into this very alive place. So at that time, I started leading creativity groups based on that idea. I started leading them at my house. And then they grew, and then I started doing it at a place called Bodywork Studio, which another one of my teachers, Wendy Waxman, she couldn't be here, she's from Sedona, Wendy Lindell, was amazing teacher. It was her studio, which she held classes here, actually in Tempe. And people would come in from Sedona, Tucson, and it was the same using spontaneous creativity to go right in to the core. So we wouldn't sit around the group and say, "Hi, I'm Phyllis, and here's my story." And it was like, let's sound how we feel. Go. We go around the circle. It's like, And for some people, it was very scary because we moved out of our voice. We become silent, or we moved out of our body, and and so it took immense amount of courage. And as soon as we sound how we felt, then we moved into intuitive dance. And that would bring up, oh my God, I can't dance. And it's like, oh, there's the ego. And then we'd move into dancing, and then we'd turn around and we'd write really quickly, and then we'd get up and sing what we just wrote on a microphone. You had to make it up and make up the melody, and boy, I mean, is there anyone in this room has been to one of my creativity groups? Uh-huh. How was it?
Terrifying.
It is. It's terrifying to the ego part of us because we have to let go. We have to let go of control, you see. And that's why we moved out of our body, out of our sound, because we got criticized, we got judged, someone said, you can't sing or you can't dance, and we moved out, you see? So it takes immense amount of courage to return to this unknown place, but that is where life is. That is where aliveness is. And as the group would begin to go there, it was just incredible what would begin to come through people. Some would just be dancing their tears, and so you could see the moment they just got out of the way and just said, okay, I'm in, I'm doing it. And then, whoa. And it wasn't about singing on pitch or the perfect dance moves or being professional. You had permission to sing off key. It was never about the end product. And for me, it never is. It's all about the process. And when you fully give yourself to the process, the end takes care of itself. And it was this transformative healing experience. And it immediately created such a connection, heart connection. And it really, began to, people would just fly out of there. They would feel alive, you see. And it was just a really powerful way to get back into the flow, because we have to be able to go back, from the known into the unknown. And that's why the practices in the book are a way that we can begin to go there. Because if you just read this book, you might as well just use it for firewood. Not that you need it in Phoenix, but you might. It does get cold. But you cannot think your way to the river. You can't talk your way. You can't read your way. You have to enter. You have to enter. And that means feeling like this. A little bit of fear, a little bit of excitement. It's going into this place, and as you begin to do it every day, you begin to become aware of what's in the way. In fact, why don't we just dip into the river right now? Just a little, put our toes in. Everyone's looking at me like, oh my God, what is she going to make us do? Well, everybody has a blank card. If you don't, raise your hand. And a marker. Just be open to going. It's painless. You're not going to die. And it's only a 30-second exercise. This is the way we have to coax our thinking mind to show up. So just have your blank piece of paper and your pen. Anybody need one? Just raise your hand. Okay. So just have it on your lap and have it ready. So on the count of 3, I want you to sing ah. Ready? Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Ready? Ah. Perfect. One more time. This time, let's raise the roof. If you didn't really go on in, let's go. Let's jump. Let's go. Ready? Come on. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Woo! Already raised the energy in the room. Woo! So now what I want you, no talking, with your non-dominant hand and your eyes closed, I want you to draw for 30 seconds. Go. Notice what you notice. Perfect. Did anyone notice the dragon? Oh my God, what are we doing? She's crazy. She'd make us sing, and now we gotta. I can't draw with my left hand. With the eyes closed, this is terrible. Look at that person. Her art's pretty good. See, hello. What is between you and the blank moment? What is between you and the canvas? That is what's between you and the moment. You and life. And the ego takes us away from the moment, and awareness brings us back. And this process itself is the beginning of awakening to what's happening all the time. And as you become, as you begin to show up into this unknown space, at this simple little exercise, it'll begin to transform you from the inside out. As you'll begin to see, oh, monkey mind's back. Taking me somewhere else. And then you can return. And then the drawing will begin to draw itself. You see, there's this book called Stroke of Insight by Jill Bolte Taylor. She was this neuroscientist that she had a stroke on her left brain, and she lost her thinking brain for a short while. And she said our thinking brain is like the size of a peanut. It's this big. But it takes up our whole life. It stands in between everything. And so we begin to create a little space there where we begin to move into this deeper place where it's silent. And I had the real honor a few years ago to meet Carlos Santana, an amazing musician, spiritual master. I was working on a creativity documentary that, I don't know if Alejandra is here. She was co-director. She probably will be here later. But we were going all around the country filming amazing people. And so we sat down with Carlos Santana. And I remember what he said to me. He said, Phyllis, the journey of life is 12 inches long. And I was like, huh? He said, it's from here to here. It's moving out of the head into the heart. This chatter mind, da da da. Sometimes there's a lot of psychic debris there because we move out of our hearts because it's so painful. So we just stay in our head so we don't have to feel. And he said, the journey back, and that's why I have a section in my book called Clearing. It's one of the first chapters because, it's like we've all heard of physical hoarders. They have so much stuff, they bring all this stuff into their house and they hold on, and soon it like blocks the light, from the window, and then blocks the door. No one can come in, they can't go out, and it's the same is true in your energy body. We all have an energy body, and as we go through things in life, I kind of say it's like a backpack. It's like, say you went through trauma as a child, and you put the rock in the backpack, and then you were bullied, and there's a couple more rocks, and your first love betrayed you, oh my God, and you push this under the rug, and you put that in the backpack, and, we're all carrying around this load of stuff, and it takes a lot of energy, and we need to lay down that burden. And clearing is a way of clearing out. Even through the creative exercises, you begin to clear out. That's why as we begin the journey back, we might, dance our rage or, sound our grief, and we begin to move it out of the cellular memories. And it really is this process, and the exercise is the love letter, and you can truly go through everything that's ever happened to you and begin to release and forgive and become present. And if something happened to you this morning, you can do it on that, and that keeps it clear. Because the most important thing you can do is to stay present, to keep the channel open, to clear out so you can fully be here. Because people say, I don't know how to hear my intuition. Well, it's underneath all that. It's underneath there. And so we begin to clear out so we can begin to become present with each other. And there's different sections in the book. There's different ways to embody. There's writing, singing. Well, there's a section called Going from Looking to Seeing, which I mentor a lot of artists, but a lot tend to be photographers since I am one. And I say this is the most important thing you can do, go from looking to seeing. And there's a story in there about this photographer named Minor White. Some of you might have heard of him. Excuse me. He's this American photographer from like the 40s, 50s. And people would come from all around the world to just do his workshops. He did these beautiful black and white, soulful portraits and landscapes. And people would come from all over. And photographers, they'd bring all their gear. And he'd say, I want you to keep all your gear in your room for the first couple days. And they're like, oh, I thought we were doing photography. He's like, what I'm going to teach you is vital. And the technical thing, yes, it's important, but it's secondary. And so the first thing he'd have them do was ecstatic dance. And you can imagine these photographers, I can joke about it because I am one, but a lot of photographers tend to be kind of heady, controlling light, aperture, f-stop, And so this was like, oh. And so he worked with them for a couple days just dancing in this free dance. Because he said life is movement. We can't come to life in this fixed way of being. And so he began to just work them until after a couple days, they were just empty. They're just like, woo, free. And then he said, okay, now I want you to go get your camera. And I want you to go out and take a photo. But I do not want you to take a photo unless the moment speaks. If the moment doesn't speak, then do not take the photo. So they're like, oh, okay. So they went out and they're walking around, and there was this one photographer who he'd been walking for hours, and nothing was happening, and all of a sudden the dragon, oh my God, what are you doing? You haven't taken a photo, you're gonna go back empty-handed, you're not creative, who thinks you can even do photography? Oh, see, the moment we go empty and there's space, it's like, oh, here it comes. We have to be okay with emptiness, silence, going to a space where it seems like nothing is going on. And so anyway, this guy, he just kept walking, and then he finally just gave up. He sat down and he looked up, and all of a sudden the moon had just moved behind the branch, and the light was streaming through the branch. And as he picked up his camera, he saw that there was a bird on that branch. And right when he pulled it to his eye, the bird took flight. The light, the moon, the bird, snap. The moment captured him. You see, the moment he gave up, he was like, oh. The moment he surrendered is when the moment spoke. And that's why there's this great quote. It's by Cartier-Bresson, who's this amazing, he was this documentary photographer, one of my favorites. He said, a photograph is never taken or seized by force. By making it happen, it offers itself up. It's the moment that takes you. Do not take the photo. See, what we are looking for is looking for us. That's St. Francis of Assisi. You see, when we got so much in the way, it's like we're so full of ourselves, and the moment can't find us. And the Zen priest monk who wrote John Dado Laurie, he said, if the energy is really flowing freely, the brush paints by itself. The camera photographs, the sculpture forms, the words write, the dance dances, the creator of the art, the subject of the art, and the expression itself merges into this single force, into this flow in which there is no thought, no reflection, no evaluation. It's just the art manifesting itself. It's just the art manifesting itself. There's no one there. The ego mind, the little self dropped away. Not my will, but thy will be done. It got out of the way. That's how we go from looking to seeing, because looking is from the mind. And just how we learned that the mind can't dance. Well, the mind can't see either. It can look, but true seeing comes from the soul. And it comes from a state of emptiness and getting out of the way. And I say, if there's any lack in one's life, I mean any lack of vitality, lack of ideas, lack of money. How many starving artists do we? It's like you're out of the flow. Because we become aware of, where we create from is where we live from, where we work from. And when you work from the ego mind, it's like, oh, what about me? How can I get more likes? How can I get more money? How can I get more customers? How can I get, what's in it for me? When you work from the flow, when you get out of the way, what's in me for you? What's in me for the world? In the state of flow, there is just sharing. There's just giving, because you are it. You're just in this state of flow, sharing the love, sharing the inspiration. And I say when you're working from the ego, it's like the Dead Sea. We've all heard of the Dead Sea. It's like a river flows in, but no river flows out. That's why it's the Dead Sea. It's dead. It's not alive. And the word affluence actually means to flow. So when we get in that state of flow, we just share for no reason, because that's what we're here to do. And some of my clients who really struggle with this, I say, here's a great exercise. I want you to go out every day and do a random act of kindness anonymously. Sometimes I'll go to a restaurant and I'll have the waitress bring me over a tab, someone else's tab, and I'll say, look, I'm gonna take care of it, but don't tell her, or don't tell them. See, it gets you in this way of being that creates flow. And you always will be taken care of. It's amazing. I'm a testimony of it. It comes in ways you never would expect. It's like a tree where we're when we're working from the ego, we're like a branch that's cut off from a tree, and we're on the ground, and we're trying to get more fruit. You see, you have to stay connected to the roots, which is the invisible part of the tree. That's what you have to nurture. That is this unknown space. That's where the fruit comes from. You don't focus on the fruit. You get out of the way. And, I love Ralph Waldo Emerson. He had this great quote. He said, "Do not go where the path may lead." Meaning, do not go where you've been conditioned to go, like the story of who you think you are, and all these ideas and mass. And do not go where the path may lead, where everyone's going. Go where there is no path. Go from the known into the unknown. That's why creativity is such a catalyst. It takes us from this known place into the unknown. And in shamanism, they say there's 3 worlds of consciousness, 3 fields. It's the known, the unknown, and the unknowable. See, when we're in the known, it's like this very constricted way of seeing, and it's like being in prison. When we begin to step into the unknown, we're like, oh, we begin to loosen that hold. And then we begin to realize anything's possible. That's where I want to go, in this place. And then the unknowable, it's a mystery. It's like, what's beating your heart? It's a mystery. Do not go where the path may lead. Go where there is no path. Right? And leave a trail. Because the world needs your sound, your movement, your light, your brilliance, your genius, your creativity, your originality. This is where it comes from. This is where it happens, in this unknown space. And you begin to realize in this process is that you're not just this separate wave on the ocean, like this, oh, I'm a, this kind of wave or that kind of wave, whatever identity. As you go a little deeper, like you do in the ocean, a couple feet deeper, it's just one ocean. It's just one flow. And so instead of trying to make it happen, it's like you begin to become the ocean, just the ocean waving. And you change your identity from being this separate self to this your greater self. And to sum it up, if the book is like, can we begin to move out of that mental narrative and and really integrate into life, into this moment, where you're fully in it. Because what's the opposite of being fully in it? Oh, it's this. Being fully out of it. Checked out, checking emails, texts. Perfect timing. Or is it? No. Totally in it, totally out of it, right? Spaced out, checked out. I mean, my friend was like, well, if I'm on Facebook and hours go by, does that mean I'm in the zone? No. I lose track of time. No, that means you're zoned out. The opposite of being in the zone. Because you see, we think of flow states are like if you have to go to Tibet and reach this state. When you begin to really enter the moment fully, every moment becomes an opportunity to become a peak moment. And every experience can become optimal. Right? When we begin to surrender to the flow, our path finds us. And we begin to live out our greater version of ourselves. And you find that when you're fully in life, you're fully here, you're the happiest. You're also the most alive and vital, which is healthy. And it just works. It's like when you come to a relationship with total presence, you've dropped out of your thinking chatter mind. All you have is deep listening and space. That's love. Because they feel seen. That's what we need. And you never know where it's going to take you. You have to be okay with the unknown. You never know why. You have to surrender. It's a constant practice. I mean, I don't honestly know why I wrote these 2 books. I didn't even know where it was going to go. I was guided to do it. Inspiration comes and you're guided and you just go. And I wrote them and I didn't even know where it was going to go after that. Maybe it'd reach one person and it was interesting is that last week a man back east called me and he said, gosh, he's like, I wanted to reach out to you because I bought 10,000 Hours book and we love it so much. I work for Goodwill and we help homeless people and people who are recovered addicts and people who have been incarcerated to get back on their feet, and we want to incorporate your book into our programs. And I was just so moved and touched. You see, we never know where things are going to go. And we just get out of the way and surrender and allow. And you realize it's just one flow. See the music? I think that's a sound. I think that's a, oh no, that's perfect. See, there's no accidents. There's no accidents that you all showed up tonight. There's never accidents. It's all perfect. We don't make anything wrong. We don't make our ego wrong. We just notice. Just notice what you notice. Notice. So before I'll go into questions, I just want to say, I hope, you're inspired to just begin to show up in a small way, because small practices lead to great transformation. And there are support here in the city. I mean, that's why I mentor. I have creative retreats to Italy, but there's also an amazing dance community, right? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ecstatic dance every week. You can drop in with all these amazing people and get into this flow and become aware of oneself and awaken. And did you know that Pinna from Changing Hands Bookstore, she's a woman here. I don't think she's here tonight, but she leads chanting and singing here at the store, and it's just a beautiful way to just come into your heart. And there's just all these amazing resources here in town, and I'm going to list them on my blog. So if you're interested, you can come check it out. And I want to hear how it goes. I really do. I want to hear your experience. So, thank you. If there's any questions, the mic is open. If anybody wants to get up and sing a song or, do a little dance, get down tonight. Is there any questions? Come in, brave soul. Oh, good. There's one.
So I'm a musician, and when I feel like I'm in the flow, then what I would say is I have an acute awareness of what's going on. Not like awareness like my ego's
right
messing with me, but just like a real open awareness. Like it's like kind of like time is not part of it, but I'm acutely aware.
Yes.
So I don't know if that would.
That's it. Yes. That's presence. You're fully in it, and it's like a sensory awareness.
My whole surroundings
Yes.
are, like, it's not like we ignore my surroundings.
Nope.
They're
It's the
part of it.
dropping of our conscious mind into this deeper awareness that's fully here. Yes, that's exactly it. And if you can begin to do that not only when you play music, but as you, in everyday moments, you become aware, where are you? You know, that's the real practice. Life is the ultimate teacher.
I have a question.
Yes.
So, I'm a painter, and last month I haven't painted anything, and it's kind of freaking me out. You know, like, what if I never make another painting? And I'm usually I never believed in the source until I started painting, and I felt really, really, really connected to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, like, where's my connection? And what's gonna happen? And what if I never make another painting again? And
Dragon.
right, my dragon is very loud right now.
Notice. The way to cure that is just become fully present. Like you did a drawing, you just entered. It's not so much about the end result, although, you know, a lot of paths lead to becoming a professional artist, you know, but it's always about becoming aware. It's the practice. And sometimes, you know, I will go from drawing to dancing. Sometimes I'll be in music, you know. But the more I go there, the more I become aware, and it begins to affect my whole life, you know. So, and sometimes, you know, if something's calling us, we show up. You know, if painting's calling us, the hardest part is getting to the blank page, to the blank canvas. Because in between that is, oh my God, I'm so tired, why should I do this? Oh my God, I should paint, see the dialogue. Oh, I should be painting, I'm not even painting, am I gonna ever do, you know? You wanna end that? Over, dissolve. Get up in a static dance. Gone. It's incredible. That's why the path of creativity, that's why it's used in Zen monasteries as a sacred path to the essence. And it works. It really, really does. It's meditative, and it's healing, and it's full of vitality and joy. It is ecstatic. There's nothing like it. And once you've tasted that, you'll always want to show up. There's not a morning that I do not show up. I will not miss. You know, if I have a flight to catch at 7 a.m., I get up at 3 a.m. I do, because to me, that's the most important place to show up to. It's my contemplative practice. It's everything. Thy will be done. Any other questions? Yes, Mike in the back. Yay, I'm glad you made it.
Thanks for spelling, by the way.
Yeah. It wasn't me.
Do you have one tool to use more often, your go-to tool, or you maybe use daily or more often?
Every day I have a blank journal, and in fact you can get them here at Changing Hands bookstore, but every day I automatic write, especially if I get off center, if there's a lot going on, I just want to empty out. And sometimes I'll draw with my left hand, you know, I actually do a lot extra, and then sometimes I'll write with my left hand, you know, just get out of what I'm used to doing. But every day I write, every day I draw. Every day, like, I'll turn on some music and just break out. Even if it's just 2 minutes, or it's enough to clear out. And if I do a lot of reading, because I also read inspiration, I want to balance it, because we know we can't get to the river by thinking or reading, although those are pointers. It's like, here's the river, it's over here, and it's like, oh yeah, I know that place. Then we got to jump in. It's our job to jump in, to awaken our own genius, our own knowing. So yeah, I do. Pretty much the book is my life. Really is, and that's why I wrote it. People ask me, you know, I want to know what you do every day. Well, between this book and this book, it's what I do every day. This, vital. This also important. You got to take care of the temple. You know, everything's a path of awareness, but This is where I embody spirit. This is where I live it. It's not just an idea. And it's exhilarating. It's hard to get there. It's like, you know how we get so busy, first thing we do, we start getting distracted. It's so hard to show up for this sacred space. I tell you though, if I could say anything, it's the most important space you can show up for. It really, really is. This silent space, this empty space. When you begin to go there, it's just like divine nectar fills you. And it also takes care of you. It also guides you beyond you could ever imagined. So. Any other questions before we do a little book signing? Well, oh yes.
It's not really a question, I'm going to share a story because I read your book, I read several other books on similar topics about the moment, meditation, and Zen.
Yeah.
And I have Herbie Hancock's new book. He's a piano musician.
Love him.
Called Possibilities, and I was a little wary about reading it because I didn't want to get distracted from all of that other stuff. But if I can just briefly share the first story that he shares in the book.
Absolutely.
He was part of Miles Davis' quartet in the 60s, which was called the Second Great Quartet, and they're in their prime, and everyone's just jamming. It's like the greatest. He can't imagine life any better, and they're on tour in Europe, and he's playing a piece, and Miles Davis is ready to take a solo on one of his signature tunes, and he said, I hit this chord that I don't know what in the world happened. I wanted to crawl into a hole, and it was like the worst moment of my life. And Miles Davis, instead of hesitating, goes on to play a solo that made his chord sound like the greatest chord he's ever, he made him look like the...
Right, a genius.
And he goes, it took me years to figure out what it was, but I judged. I thought it was wrong.
Right.
And Miles Davis didn't view it as a wrong, he viewed it as a possibility of something new happening. And many, many of the stories in the book, and so it's, even though it's a completely different thing, all of the same things come up in many, many different areas.
That is so good. That's exactly right on. Beyond identifications, being wrong or right, is just the ocean. It's like we get out of those judgments, and we roll with it, and that's spot on. I'll have to check out that book. It sounds awesome. Sounds awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Do you have a question, Ken? No.
High five.
Oh.
You're so good.
Good or bad?
Yeah,
Go ahead. Russell.
Hey, I was wondering, do you still do the Artist Way, or because I've done the Artist Way before too, so it's really...
You know what? I visit that book every so often. I recommend it to a lot of the students I mentor. I practice, the morning pages and the Artist Day. I absolutely believe in that book. When you commit to it and you go all the way through it, it definitely will transform you. And that book was very transformative for me. And sometimes I go back to it and I keep learning, I keep going deeper. And if you abandon the book, if you start it and then you stop it, I'd say that's how you are in life as well. It's a lot of starts and stops. And it's true, and we don't make it wrong. We don't make it wrong. We just notice. When we commit to a path, we give it over. And in that path itself, you'll get to see everything. And it's interesting.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I definitely would recommend it.
What book was that?
It's the Artist's Way book by Julia Cameron. Yeah, and it's spiritual. It's like creativity is a spiritual path, and it really is. It really is, and it's fun too. It's really it awakens the inner child, this inner part of us that's just can't wait to play, and we see how we abandon that part of ourselves. And when we start to show up for that part, it really is the link to our life, to our creativity, and our healing.
So, there's a lot of teachers and influences in people's lives, and when you have a mentor that's like Yoda, it's great. But what do you suggest when you might have an influence or a teacher or a mentor in your life that is more negative and is judgmental, and that puts pressure on you? What do you recommend getting over that?
Well, everything's a teacher. So if you're an adult and you're working with a teacher, just notice. And notice how you receive it. Notice, and you might change teachers, or you might not. Because everyone shows up in our life for purpose, and if our teachers, it's like our mirrors around us are negative, it's probably because we're negative within, and maybe there's a healing that will happen. Because there might come a time when you just realize it's the ego. Here's the dragon striking out.
So I don't want to ask too personal questions, so if it is, just ignore me and go.
No,
Like,
it's fine. No,
so
it's good.
like you said, family members or friends that are dysfunctional, or
Right. Just fine.
Have you just let go of that, or do you ignore that, or?
Oh no, we don't ignore. We look. We accept. We notice. We notice what comes up for us. We notice what's there. Those are our greatest teachers.
And then you let it go.
And then, if you're holding on to it or it triggers you, you've just put a stone in your backpack. And those stones, it's like if we don't get rid of them, we build stone walls so no one can touch us or reach us, or we throw stones at each other. Because the war starts here. So when we empty, then we only have space and awareness for that person, and we don't make it wrong. And in that presence, or in that love, which is acceptance, a healing can happen. Yeah, it really is. And it's, I'm always learning that, relationships. Ultimate teacher. I got to go to dance class every weekend, dance that stuff out of me. But you know what? You realize, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Byron Katie says that. Yeah, it does. It's there for your awakening. And when you show up in your journal, like a blank, I always say, get a blank journal with no lines. See, the journal is a mirror to our inner worlds, and that's when we begin to see it. It's like, ooh, wow. And we write out that stuff, all that dialogue. And it's like if you wrote, oh, my relationship is driving me crazy. Eventually, wisdom would start coming through. It's just amazing how that happens. If you had a question, it would answer it. It'd be like, and you would let it go, and you actually would shift out of that. It works when you work it. Is any other questions? Should we start this dance party, or? I wish we had music. If I could turn this into like a creative group right now, I would. Thank you so much, and we'll sign books, I guess, up here. Thank you for this opportunity.